The sheriff of the small town of Kastl Rok, Alan Pambon, continues to search for the missing boy Hennid Barol on his own. The cop arrives in the woods on the outskirts of town to inspect the place where the child was last seen, but there are no signs of Henry. They are sitting down to rest for a moment. The sheriff gazes at the empty frozen lake. Suddenly a strange sound erupts, and when it fades, Hennid Var, alive and well, appears in the middle of the frozen lake. 27 years have passed. Kastl Rok continues to live its quiet life. Lacey, the warden of the famous Asank prison, is preparing to retire after 10 years of service. On his last day of work, the old man prepares breakfast for his blind wife, kisses her goodbye and leaves, but Lacey doesn't show up at the prison. Instead, he drives to a forest lake, ties one end of a rope around his neck and attaches it to a tree, and without hesitation steps on the gas pedal. The car, alone with its owner, plummets off the cliff. Teresa Porter, the deputy warden replacing the late Lacey, arrives at Sasank. She familiarizes herself with her new workplace and learns the person's history. All previous wardens have met strange ends and alive to old age, but Teresa is more concerned with something else. Sasank has long been overcrowded and prisoners are being housed, even in the gym. Officer Zaleski tells Teresa Porter about blockades. It was closed after the fire. 87, but if it's cleaned up, the block could house several dozen inmates. For his initiative, Zaleski is tasked with being the first to enter the abandoned block, check its condition and count the beds. The guard cuts the rusty lock and inspects the key, which according to official records it's been entered in about 3 years, but suddenly the officer notices fresh footprints from men's boots in the thick layer of dust. Zaleski follows the tracks which lead him to an iron door to a maintenance section. The tracks take the officer to a hatch. With difficulty he opens the old bolts and looks inside. Zedith's wallet falls out of his pocket and he has to climb down to retrieve it. At the bottom of the well, the guard finds a book and a tin of cigarette butts. This looks very suspicious, but Zizi doesn't have time to think about it. From the dark corner, a man locked in a cage stares at him, and the frightened guard hurries to get out of the well. In emergency inspection begins in some, but all prisoners are accounted for. No one can understand how an unregistered inmate ended up in the prison. The boy from the dungeon is brought to the interrogation room, but he doesn't respond to the officer's questions or react to anyone around him. Zaleski takes the prisoner to the shower. They returns to the basement to collect evidence. The main piece of evidence is the scene of cigarette butts it sent to Teresa Porter's office, and after comparing them with the butts of her predecessor, she realizes that it was Lacey who held the boy captive. There is no information about the prisoner in any official archives or in Deliver's personal records. There are no fingerprints or data about missing persons matching him. Teresa Porter worries that the incident could harm Sasank prison and ruin her career. She orders everyone to keep quiet about the terrible discovery for now to avoid attracting unwanted attention. This situation scares Zaleski. He knows well that horrible things happen in the prison, and he suspects that the boy might simply be disposed of. Teresa personally interrogates the mysterious prisoner, and for the first time in a long while he speaks. The boy says the name Hennid Var, but the local guards know for sure that this name might belong to a completely different person who once lived in Kastl Rok. Mihailin Sakogu. Hennid Var stands before the court defending a woman sentenced to the death penalty after leaving Kastl Rok. He became a successful lawyer specializing in such cases. At this trial, the lawyer fails to win and he visits his client one last time. Listening to her final words, Henry remembers the day Sheriff Alan Pambon found him. Everything before that moment has been erased from Chino's memory. Teresa studies Hennry Diver's file and reaffirms her decision not to involve the lawyer in the convoluted story. Her deputy supports the decision and suggests placing the mysterious prisoner with a dangerous criminal to quickly close the matter. Of Officer Zizi overhears the conversation between the leaders. He anonymously calls Hennid Var and tells him about the boy locked in a cage who speaks his name. Zeski warns Henry that if he doesn't come, the prisoner will face a grim end soon. A few days later, Henry arrives in Kastl Rok. Despite his long absence, people recognize him on the streets and still blame him for his death. The familiar streets trigger Chino's memories of the day Sheriff Alan Pambon found him on the lake. Everything before that remains a blank for Henry, including where he was during his disappearance. Chino's adoptive mother Ruth doesn't immediately recognize him due to her illness. He suffers from memory lapses. However, her new boyfriend Sheriff Alan instantly knows who stands before him all this time. The kid, the mysterious prisoner, sits alone in his cell, noticing a mouse nearby. He forces it with the power of his mind to approach the mouse trap. Henry heads straight to the prison. Teresa invites him into her office and claims that no boy was found in the dungeon. She assures the lawyer that the phone call was someone's bad prank and that he can safely return to Sakogu, but Henry knows this easily, and on his way out he locks eyes with Zizi. They may recognize each other but don't show it. Night falls. Officer Zizi takes his place at the monitor. Suddenly he notices that the new prison cell is empty and he doesn't appear on any of the other camera feeds. The kid reappears a second later, but now on the cameras in the corridor. He looks directly through the lens at the guard, and behind the prisoner Ziki sees the bodies of his colleagues. Ziki sounds the alarm and leaves the office to stop the criminal, but in the corridor it turns out all the jailed colleagues are alive. The scene on the monitors was just a vision and the kid never left his cell to get the full picture. We need to go back a bit in time. From its very founding, Kastl Rok was a strange town and there were always events that made the residents under in then their WLA single House left in town where something frightening happened trying to find out the details of the strange case Heinrich Bar. Visits the home of the former prison warden. He didn't tell the blind woman his name and she gladly agrees to help the lawyer showing him into her in this office, but as soon as her neighbor tells the woman over the phone who entered her house the widow asked Henry to leave and not insult her with his presence as he visits the silent boy to collect the untouched food tray. The officer tries to find out why he had the vision, but the kid continues to remain silent. News of Delaware is mysterious. Prisoner reaches the sheriff. He finds Teresa in a bar and tells her about a strange incident that happened to him 20 years ago back then. During a night shift he stopped Delaware's car and the warden told him that he had found the devil himself. Lacey locked the devil in a cage and from that moment on the horrors in Castl Rock finally stopped, but if Teresa releases the boy the town will once again descend into darkness. After the conversation with the sheriff, Teresa and her deputy descend into the well. She tries to understand why the kind and honorable Lacey kept the young boy captive and how ACT should solve this problem. Now Teresa's deputy comes for the kid. They place him in a cell with the most dangerous prisoner, hoping the criminal will rid the prison of the unwanted guest. At first everything goes according to plan. The prisoner is irritated by the silent neighbor and looks for a reason to start a fight, but the kid will react to the provocations. He only asks the giant not to touch him, assuring him that it would. Before the best, Henry spends the evening in a bar. Zedke's group also arrives there, and the lawyer secretly passes the officer a note asking him to call that night. They manage to meet and Ziz informs the lawyer that he's in on the prisoner's whereabouts for the days. Henry becomes furious and promises to involve the district attorney, but the guard refuses to act as a witness, fearing for his job. This scares Henry. He begins to suspect that the boy might have invented the story about the imprisoned victim, relying only on himself. Henry finds a way to get into show. Sanko arrives with a church mission, posing as a Bible reader at the same time as the group's visit. The guards discover the body of the dangerous prisoner with no visible wounds. The medical examiner reports to the prison warden that the man died from a serious illness, but she's puzzled by how that's noticed it earlier with such injuries. He would have been able to get out of bed. Henry has no choice but to accept that his visit to the prison once again yielded no results, but Ski manages to prove to the lawyer that the story of the prisoner is true. He releases the kid outside for a few seconds. Henry gives the prisoner brief instructions and takes a photo allowing him access to the prisoner. During lunch the kid breaks the prison rules. He stands up and walks toward the opposite wall. Ziki steps forward to subdue the prisoner and return him to his seat while no one else see and hear. He passes the boy a message from the lawyer asking him to just wait a little longer while Henry deals with the prison authorities. Zizi tells Henry what happened during their next secret meeting. The lawyer asks the guard to get closer to the prisoner to learn more about him. In return he promises to help Zizi get into law school while trying to get information from the police on the day Lacey case. Henry learns that his childhood friend Molly has been detained. The lawyer post bail, helping the girl get released in time to appear on a TV show using her ability to read minds. Molly learns everything her friend is thinking about during the ride. In gratitude for his help she reveals the truth about the Shawshank prisoner live on a popular show, shocking the audience. After the revelation Teresa Porter herself contacts Henry and asks him to come. The warden hands the lawyer a thin folder with scan information she managed to get on the kid and offers a compromise. Shawshank will pay the prisoner $300 and he will drop any claims officially. They'll call it a mistaken arrest. Henry tells his client about Teresa's offer during their first meeting. He insists that they should refuse the money and prove that this was no accident but a real kidnapping, but none of this concerns the kid. He asked the lawyer strange questions directly related to Heinrich Ντίβερ's disappearance and the death of his father 20 years ago. Zaleski continues his work, but the tension in so grows heavier for him with the guard is outraged with the behavior of his colleagues and their mistreatment of all the prisoners. The kid is also surprised. Teresa Porter's deputy tries to intimidate the boy, hoping to get the truth about his past and how he ended up in captivity, but this time the prisoner does not stay silent. He delivers a strange speech about the word of God which deeply unsettles the warden. That evening Zeski finds Henry in a bar ignoring the rules. He approaches the lawyer in front of everyone and asks him to step outside for it. The young man hands Henry a drawing of the cage and begs him to intervene in case affairs. The chaos in the prison has gone too far. He agrees to testify and expose all the violations. ZFS condition worsens by the day he stops talking to his colleagues and during secret visits to the kid promises that soon they will both escape this cursed place. Henry begins to suspect that the mystery of his client is somehow tied to what happened 30 years ago. In the district archives the lawyer finds articles and notes about his disappearance, but no further details have emerged since then and the official records have been lost. The only thing he manages to find is the address of one of the suspects in his kidnapping whose involvement was never proven. Henry travels to the man's forest home to meet the witness in person. The old man doesn't immediately recognize his visitor, but when Henry states his name the old man gives him a folder stolen from the archives. He's glad to see the boy in his house and hopes that Henry remembers what happened and soon confirms his innocence. Henry tells Alan about the conversation with the old man, but the sheriff asked Him to stop searching for the truth. He admits that in his final moments Dvasinio spoke the name of the person who pushed him off the cliff and that person was Henry himself. Henry regrets returning to Kastl Rok and he tells Ziki that he is dropping the keys and heading back to Sakogu. This news finally drives the Goldman. He takes out his service pistol and kills all the colliers who had been driving him crazy at the same time. Henry is near tears off as he tries to stop the gold end. Zizi declares that he wants to test if the bad beway order of the prison guard and the crash guard is taken out, ensuring the truth never leaves Sitting in his walls before leaving. Henry sets up a surveillance system in his meaningless house to keep the sick woman safe. He downloads the Apontolines phone and asks him to watch over the woman while he's away, but Henry has to change his plans. He's informed that his client has been released but has no home or family. The lawyer is forced to meet the kid and figure out what to do with him next. First he takes the prisoner to a doctor but after running tests the clinic refuses to admit the patient has no serious problems. A detective Molly agrees to help her friends, invites the kid to stay in her studio until Henry and sort things out. They locked the young man inside and promised that he's now completely safe and no one will find him, but at him they needed to worry about. At night the kid leaves his hiding place to walk around nighttime. Kastl Rok. He is drawn to an ordinary house where children's birthday parties and full is. The boys need the family. The mood changes. The celebration turns into a tragedy and instead of children a son screams and cries come from the house. The next day when Ulve's friend Jackie Touran visits the studio the kid has already returned to his place. Meanwhile Henry and his family head to a bridge which is being dedicated to Sheriff Alan Pambon, but the event is marred by another incident. Ruth loses her grip on reality and in front of everyone jumps into the water, not realizing who is in front of her. Jackie Torrance chatters endlessly with her new companion but hidden now as she calls Molly begging for help. The strange man has climbed onto the roof and won't respond to her request to calm down. Molly climbs up to the boy but something feels wrong. Instead of thoughts in his head she hears the cries of millions of people who have lived in Kastl Rok throughout history. The girl rushes to Henry to tell him everything. The lawyer thinks it's all nonsense but he has no choice but to let the kid in and find him a different place to stay. Henry takes the guest to his garage and offers to stay there for the time being but the young man's behavior scares Henry. Once again the kid plays the same melody on the piano that his father used to play. Alan returns to the bridge. The sheriff blames himself for what happened to Ruth and wants to take down the plaque with his name. At that moment his phone buzzes in his pocket and the old man sees a notification that someone is in the house. The sheriff rushes home and in the yard he encounters the nighttime visitor. It's the same boy Dale Lacey drove in his car 3 years ago, calling him the devil. The boy Dale raises his gun to finish what the former warden started but the kid asks the old man not to act rashly. He promises to save Ruth and restore her sanity while Henry is rearing his father. The kid rummages through a suitcase of the deceased's belongings. He finds an old video camera and tapes which contain recordings of Dvasinio's walks with his son. He meets with Alan and instructs him to find the car in which Dale Lacey brought him to the prison 3 years ago. The old man tells the boy that the car has long been at the junkyard but the kid doesn't see problem and demands that Alan find a way to get it back in the house. The kid acts like he owns the place. He puts on the suit and turns on his music player. When Ruth returns home and sees the stranger she feels ill. The woman insists to her son that the suit shouldn't be here. Her husband was buried in 80 cents and that things are going to. For Henry decides to get rid of the visitor. He takes him to a psychiatric clinic and leaves him in the hands of the caring staff but the very next day the kid returns to the Dvar home. Alan finds his old friend's car and convinces the driver to give him the wrecked vehicle. With this news he turns to the kid but the young man appears on the doorstep with a serious injury and it seems he no longer has any desire to save Ruth. The old man rushes into the house to find the woman and learn what happened to her. He sees scattered belongings and red stains but Ruth is nowhere to be found. At that moment Ruth is hiding in the barn quietly loading her gun. Her nerves are stretched to the limit. When the kid returned to the house Ruth thought she saw her late husband in him. A news report about a fire at the psychiatric clinic snapped the woman back to reality and she realized that the guest posed a serious danger to her family. She found the gun in her tube in the secret stash but the clip was empty. The strange boy was far scarier than Ruth could have imagined. He not only got Vasinio a suit but he began to act like the deceased man. The kid knew everything that only the head of the family could have known. He invited Ruth to dance and answered all her questions, proving that he blew in the house for the first time. Ruth tried her best to play along with the stranger but he noticed her anxiety and offered her a sedative but the woman managed to deceive the kid and escape from him to find ammunition and protect herself. Finally her memory helped Ruth locate the secret stash. She hides in the barn, loads the gun and waits with bated breath. When the footsteps sound dangerously close she pulls the trigger and hears the body hit the floor but when she manages to take a look it's not the strange stranger lying there. Alan's body lies on the floor before her new residence. Move to Kastl Rok. A couple buys Dale's house and plans to open a hotel there. In the basement they discover hundreds of paintings that the former owner painted and on every canvas the young couple sees the same face, the face of the kid. All the paintings find their place on the walls of the house and the couple returns to setting up the hotel. Fortune smiles upon them. The first guests arrived that very day promising success for the hotel but the owner of the house, Gordon, decides to Celebrate this event in a strange way. He brutally murders the guest's returning home. Once again finds the kid there. The guest leads the lawyer and shows him his bond still lying on the floor in the bond. The kid tells Henry that he has waited for him for 27 years and now they must go into the woods, but the arriving cops seem to have other plans and the strange boy flees, leaving Henry to deal with the problems alone. That night Henry decides to break into Delawre's house to finally find information about his mysterious prisoner. The man enters through the basement and goes upstairs to the living room, which is covered in portraits of